Hello, everyone. Welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you to navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we will dive headfirst into the world of B2B marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the roller coaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this journey. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations, because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you're here with us today. So today I have the very amazing Christine Bailey here with me. So Christine, would you like to go ahead and give yourself give the audience a little bit of a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for inviting me, Lucy. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. So my name's Christine Bailey. I've been in B2B marketing in the tech world for, more than 30 years now. I started my journey out with Hewlett-Packard in Germany. And I've also worked for, some other giants like Cisco Systems. And currently I'm a senior director of marketing at Moody's. And in between, I've worked for some smaller companies in the CRM consultancy space, a high-tech PR agency, and also for my last two roles, I was CMO of Valitor, an Icelandic payments company, and of Passport, a SaaS regtech company, which was acquired by Moody's in November 21.
Fantastic, thank you. So glad to have you on. So we had a little bit of a chat beforehand, and we have decided on a title for this podcast, which is "From Funnels to Fettuccine: Navigating the Spaghetti Buying Journey." So I'm really excited about this topic, because actually it's one of my favourite topics, and probably one of the most common ones that actually come up in my kind of therapy sessions that I hear with other CMOs. So I've been having this discussion for years, but I'll be totally honest with you, like nobody yet, I feel, has kind of really cracked it. So I'm quite excited about this. And I do promise not to start the kind of death of the like MQL chant. Or but yeah, we're going to be talking about the buying journey, how much it's changed, and how that's really impacting how we measure marketing performance. So let's jump into it. So I kind of feel like this kind of buying journey has gone from this really, thinking back to kind of, textbooks when you're studying marketing, this really neat little map or the nice funnel. You always think about the funnel, don't you? And now it's this big, messy plate of spaghetti. So, I mean, what's changed in your view? How has it changed?
You know what? I just had a flashback then to an acronym I learned at university, AIDA,
Yes.
awareness, interest, desire, action, I think is what it stood for.
Yep.
And exactly that, this idea of this linear journey. And I mean, of course, broadly speaking, it still exists, but the world has got a lot more complex. And also in a B2B environment, it's never one person that's making the decision. It's a network of people. You think of, in corporate life, how many different teams you have to work with, and how many people are involved in every decision. So this buyer's journey is a lot more complex when it's in a B2B environment. There's lots more people involved in that journey, but also digital. That's had a massive impact on the buyer's journey, because I think we said a while back that more than 70% of the buyer's journey is online, and that I wish somebody would re-measure that stat, because it has to be more than 70% now of the buyer's journey happening online. And a lot of people's job now is to go out and research the solutions, long before you're getting into conversation. So I love this statistic that says only 3 or 5% of people are in market to buy at any one time. So that came from a book called Sticky Branding a while back. And then more recently, the Ehrenberg Institute and LinkedIn have done their own research and updated that. So if only 3 or 5% of our target audience are in market to buy at any given time, why are we doing demand generating activities to that 3 or 5%? What about the 95 or 97% that are not in market to buy right at this very moment? We've got to have the right content and be in the right conversations in the right places to catch those buyers as they fall, is an expression that I like. It's meeting buyers where they are. So how can we make sure that all of our marketing catches people wherever they are in that buying journey? And another analogy I like to use, which again I've borrowed from John Miller, is this idea of the football pitch. So I'm talking American football here, not English football or soccer. Is this idea that the ball is going to pass up and down the field between multiple different players, of which marketing is only one. So you're going to have the sales development reps, the SDRs in there. You're going to have sellers. You're going to have customer success. You'll have procurement is probably in there as well, but you're going to be that the ball will be passed up and down the field many different times, and the idea is that it's about interactions necessarily from this linear journey from a marketing lead through to a closed deal. So really it's about how do we measure all of those interactions that are happening in the sales pitch? How do we make sure that we understand which part of the game is being played by all the different players within our organization? So I think alignment is going to be, we'll get to sort of predictions for next year, but it's not just sales and marketing alignment. And we've spoken many times about the importance of sales and marketing alignment, and it is absolutely critical, but it's more than just sales and marketing alignment, particularly in a SaaS environment where it's all about customer retention and customer success. That alignment with the customer success team is equally as important and critical as that alignment with sales. So now I've forgotten where we started this original the buyer's journey. Yes, that's what we were talking about. But I think that's why it's changed. It's the alignment is really critical. It's catching buyers as they fall, and it's about this analogy of the ball passing up and down the football pitch.
I really love that analogy of the ball kind of passing around, because you think about it, maybe I'm going to take the analogy too far, but at the end of the day, it is about who the winner and like loser is of that game, or it's
Yep,
about winning that game, isn't it? It's about scoring the
absolutely.
most goals and winning. There's your revenue. That's what all
Yeah,
of us on the pitch are all working towards, is that like goal scoring, which is the revenue goal. But actually, if you think about the player manager and what they're looking at all of those little like touch points and things like that, aren't they? Of like all of the different
yeah,
players and what their roles are, and whether you're now I'm completely going to show how ignorant I am about American football, but you have the different players that are like the forwards and the defenders and the attackers and that sort of thing. They've all got their different roles to play. So I suppose where I'm going with this is, like, traditionally in the past, it's been very much that the MQL being the bit where marketing pass it over to sales, and then sales run forward and like score the goal. But it's not. Marketing now are not just handing the ball over, we're actually getting more and more involved in all of those touch points along the rest
yes.
of the pitch, aren't we? So how does that kind of like measurement change then? How does a player manager measure all their players' success?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, gosh, even 20 years ago, we used to say marketing would open the door and sales would go flying through it.
Oh God.
And that's not the case anymore. As you say, how do we measure things? Because if I'm going to be controversial, I would also have my placard of, the MQL is dead. But actually, it's not dead. It still has its role to play. But we have to think about our overall strategy and whether we are looking to, land new customers, or whether it's about cross-sell and upsell, and whether we have an account-based marketing or an account-based sales approach in strategic accounts, and where's marketing really going to add the value in lead generation? It's probably going to be in that white space. Because if you think, I mean, I just know the conversations that go on with us internally, that different segments don't get an equal share of the leads, and you have more established segments saying, why has that segment got more leads than my segment? And I say, well, if you think about how a buyer is behaving, 50 different people might attend your webinar or come along to your marketing touch point. and the thing that you're sharing or trying to create demand for has landed with everybody. But if they already have an account manager, are they going to go to your website and fill out a form that says, I would like an anonymous person to contact me and tell me more, if I already know exactly who to contact because they're my relationship manager? Of course, I'm going to contact my relationship manager and say, oh, I attended this webinar, or I went along to this event, or I've just read this really great white paper that you've sent me. Could we talk about it? They're not going to go to a website and fill out a form. So that's not to say that that marketing tactic that we've deployed has not been just as successful for cross-sell and upsell, but it's going to be harder to measure because they won't have gone and filled out the form. So we should be looking at form fills more in the white space where people don't know who to contact. It really is something that's coming in cold. And absolutely, it makes sense to measure from that first touch point where they came to you cold because they didn't know who else to contact, and you can track that journey through to, ultimately winning that business. Fantastic. We should definitely still be tracking that. But what's much harder to measure are the many passings of the ball up and down the football pitch. So it's about marketing and interactions. And just for fun, recently we looked at one of our campaigns, and because it was for a new product that we were ultimately generating thought leadership for and generating demand for. We looked at, within that account that had bought that new thing that we'd marketed, how many touch points were they? And it was with an established account that had a relationship manager. And we didn't have a lead anywhere in the system, although we know anecdotally that they heard about it from our marketing activities. But we touched that account in 50 different ways
Well,
in that period, which, and I can tell you, unfortunately, it was a very manual exercise to be able to identify those 50 touch points, but it was more curiosity out of our part to say, how many touch points were there? Well, there were 50. And we looked at others, and they were also, especially in these big accounts, there's going to be multiple touch points. So how can we get recognition for those multiple touch points and help people understand that it's not just about the MQL?
yeah, exactly. And it's because we work, you said it kind of right at the start as well, because there's so many different channels now. So, back in the day, like years ago, somebody was going on that buying journey. They would just maybe, go into a shop if it was kind of a B2C environment, or if it was B2B, they'd just go to the website and download or fill out the kind of contact me form or something like that. There wasn't all of these different channels, all these different types of, so much content that we have now. So when we push a piece of content out, like you just said with that kind of white paper, you might have it on your website behind a form, but you might have also sent it out via email, in which case you don't direct people to a form, you would kind of just give it to them. So you've got to measure the clicks on it there. Then you push it out via social. And again, you might have like different methods for paid and organic, and whether you actually give the asset to them or whether you make them go through a form or not. And suddenly as marketing teams there, we're sitting there going, well, just for that one asset, let alone those 50 touch points that you just mentioned, but just for that one asset, we're trying to measure it across all of these different channels. It's it's crazy.
And sometimes I think we're trying to be too clever because each individual buyer journey is going to be exactly that. It's going to be individual. And unless you have very sophisticated technology that does multi-touch attribution,
Yeah.
you're never really going to know what was the tipping point that actually caused them to, well, I say caused them to make the sale. It's not going to be due to a marketing activity that made them buy. It's ultimately, as I said, many different players on the football pitch. So in a way, maybe we have to live with a bit of ambiguity and understand that we know we're having success with our tactics, and we absolutely need to measure every single tactic in order to continuously improve. And what we do is at Moody's, we build a picture of a fully integrated campaign, and we look at the different activities that we have at different stages of the funnel, and we measure it. We build a picture of, for this campaign, what was the success or the metrics of every single tactic, and that builds a great picture, particularly when you start to build multiple campaigns, and you can look back and see, okay, what was the balance of success of tactics in that campaign versus this campaign. But does it really matter? Sort of understanding exactly what was the tipping point that made somebody fill out the form. I don't think it does. As long as you understand how each tactic is contributing, and understanding this, this need to sort of play a game with many other players, does it really matter? And of course, I don't want to say marketing metrics don't matter. Of course they matter. And at the top of the tree, somebody was asking me recently, well, what does a CFO care about? Well, the CFO cares about the awareness and the brand, and they care about what's coming out at the bottom in terms of leads and contribution to revenue. Marketing people care about every single metric and everything in between, because that's how we continually improve. But yes, at a high level, people want to know, do people know who we are, and is marketing contributing to revenue?
Do you know what? Actually really glad that you just said that the thing a minute ago about mapping out. You went through that exercise of like mapping out all of the different touch points for those different buyer journeys, because I remember I've done this a few times across kind of a few like last few companies that I've been with, and you just said something really key. You were like, it's a very manual exercise. And it's one of those things that's always kind of bugged me because it does take quite a long time to do. I literally just use a Miro board to do it because I'm quite visual. So I kind of plot all of the different touch points. But it has always been just such a like a valuable use of my time. But what I found is, like, to your point, actually, you just said it's finding out which of those touch points matter. If you have it in that way on a Miro board where you can see all of the journeys, you can see all the touch points, you start to see trends, don't you? Like, oh my goodness, you've got something here where suddenly the sales what you call it, the cycle, whatever, suddenly jumps forward and becomes kind of quite hotter, or the person becomes the higher intent or more keen when they do this one thing. Maybe it's download a product brochure, I don't know, but you start to kind of see those trends, don't you? And you're like, okay, well, I know I can start to pull on this thread or play with that a little bit.
And you know what this is? It's almost like the ugly stepchild, isn't it? The product brochure.
Yes.
It's not a very sexy thing, is it, in marketing terms? But I can tell you, if somebody is downloading a product brochure, they're close to the end of their buying journey. We love people downloading our product brochures, but yeah, it's not a very sexy thing to measure, is it?
It's not, but that's why I said product brochures, because that's what it is. I remember actually in one company where it was exactly that. We just suddenly noticed all of these like product brochures were that almost like that tipping point where then
Mm.
they went over to sales and it suddenly went pshoom, sort of thing. Like the deal escalated really quickly, and then the ones that hadn't downloaded the product brochure didn't. They kind of stalled for quite a bit. So, oh, this is really interesting. But yeah, you're so right. It's not one that we like to push because we feel like it's a bit too salesy, don't we? But they do need it. Yeah, no, you mentioned as well about people doing kind of like so much more research nowadays. Like how does marketing avoid getting into that situation in the game that I talked about, like when we used your analogy and said that it is just a passover to sales, that we are kind of keeping as part of that, keeping in the game as part of the conversation for kind of much longer if they are continuing to do more and more research.
Well, as I said, I think it's about making sure that we've got the right content or the right tactic for people, depending where they are on that research journey. So whether it's an awareness activity at the top of the funnel where we're doing some press activity, where we're doing social posts, where we're doing, LinkedIn advertising, paid media right at the top of the funnel. And then we might be getting more into conversion where it's a bit more meaty. I'm a really strong believer in original research. So for all our major campaigns, we'll do a piece of original research, which is also really important in this age of AI, because AI is just regurgitating stuff that's already there. So it's the original content that will really grab people's interest, because that's not something created by AI. So we do a piece of original research, and that becomes our rock content that forms the basis for lots of other tactics. So we'll turn it into a report. We'll have a podcast on it. We will be doing lots of LinkedIn posts about it. We'll probably have a webinar. And then we get into the bottom of the funnel where it's actually the product brochure or the the scripts for the SDRs or the email signatures, and all of those things. So really it's about, and the product brochure, whatever stage of research that person is in, whether it's right at the beginning when they're starting with a blank sheet of paper to the bottom where they're looking for a product brochure, we've got to make sure we catch those buyers as they fall, or catch those researchers as they fall, and have the right content ready for them when they are looking.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you've just made me think. So, I have a little bit of a confession. Like, I think, although I was just saying about, or we were just saying about the funnel, it's kind of how I sort of plan my campaigns when I'm sitting down or with the team, like we're all sitting down thinking about kind of the next campaign that we're going to do. We do actually kind of almost use the funnel to start off with, but
Mm.
now you're making me feel better. Actually, I don't feel so bad now because for exactly the reason you said. It's not so much about expecting that the person's going to go on that linear journey from awareness to interest, whatever the IDA model, but it's more just making sure that you've got the assets that cover each of those
Yeah,
areas. So when they are in that stage, you can serve them then.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay. So if you was designing then like a kind of a campaign like from scratch, if you were starting from scratch, like how would you kind of define that measurement? You said earlier about all the different areas and things that you can measure. Like how would you design a kind of measurement system for a particular campaign then if you were starting from scratch?
Um, as I said, we would put the tactics at the place in the funnel, and then we will be using traditional metrics like the number of impressions, from our paid advertising, and also from our organic social, and also we have an exec advocacy program where we have Moody's execs posting on LinkedIn, so we count all of those posts relating to from that program. PR, press articles, impressions from those, and then listeners of a podcast, those sort of high level metrics where we don't yet know who the person is. So we would put a broad term of reach to talk about those metrics, and then we would go into response. So somebody has leaned in some way, they've registered for a webinar, they've attended an event. I would say they downloaded a report, but I hate gated content, so they haven't necessarily filled out a form to tell us they've downloaded the report. But yeah, they've leaned in some way, so they've become an individual rather than just kind of like, the big masses where you don't know who they are. And then you get into sort of like the revenue metrics where they have filled out a form, or they've had a conversation with a salesperson, or they've downloaded, or they've started that journey of the marketing qualified lead, sales accepted lead, etc., etc. And then, as I said, we can build up a good picture each over time, because we can compare the last major campaign to the most recent major campaign, and you start to build up a pattern of metrics. And that's sort of like that's more at the campaign level. Obviously, we have regular reporting on the amount of websites that's at the campaign level. In actual fact, just last week we had my last sort of team meeting before the end of the year, and we did like the grand review of 2024, where we looked at the overall success of our email campaigns, overall success of our PPC, our web traffic, performance of our content, performance of social. And there it wasn't campaign specific. We were looking at the aggregates, and where we can make a difference. What would we do differently moving forward? So we look at the campaign level. We obviously measure leads every month. We provide a comprehensive lead report, and then periodically we look at the metrics and success of those at the tactical level.
At what point then is there a kind of like a handover, like, or a handshake maybe, or a kind of a high five between marketing and sales, where some of those leads that you're generating sales will action them or do something with them?
Oh, absolutely. And somebody in my team is meeting on a weekly basis with the sales development reps who are following up on the leads and continually getting feedback on the quality of the leads. Are they in the right areas? Are they good quality? Is there something we could do better? Looking at, are there any patterns between the tactic that generated that lead? I mean, the quality of the digital leads is always higher than the quality of the event leads. And I see things changing with events, because I don't think people go along to an event because they're looking for someone to buy from. Whereas I think because events are expensive, we're looking to measure how many leads we got from an event and saying, okay, that was a good event because we got this this amount of leads, and that will determine whether we go to the event, support the event again next year. Whereas if we think about that buyer's journey and 70% of the buyer's journey happening online, I see less and less of lead generating happening at events, and people are more going along as an education exercise, and to when they're much earlier on in their journey, when they want to get educated and get ideas. So I think we tend to count too much as leads from events because the salespeople have had a conversation with somebody on the stand and they've captured their contact details, and then when you follow up with them, they didn't actually really want anybody to follow up with them. I'm not ready to buy right now. Also, I think generally speaking, more junior people tend to go along to events because they're doing that research phase, so they're not actually the decision maker. So when you follow up with them, the quality of the lead it's much earlier in the journey than compared to a digital lead.
It's so true. It's a real tough one, isn't it? Because events do cost cost
They
quite a
cost a
bit.
lot of money, and they have their place, particularly in areas where you do need to increase your awareness. It could be in a new market area or a new market or a new segment.
Hmm.
There's lots of reasons why you should support events, but it's not necessarily for that lead. If the cost of a lead from an event is a lot higher than the cost coming from digital.
I suppose, like you said, I like what you said earlier about the way that you're kind of doing those campaign metrics and you're doing them as, at the top of the funnel there, you're just calling it reach rather than
Yeah.
obviously lead generation at that point. So if you was to then, as long as when you're telling that story back to the organization or to the board or to the management team, you would just put that event in the reach section and say, look, there were 100 delegates that kind of were within our ICP. So that's kind of our reach. That's what we hit. So not necessarily focusing on the MQLs or the SQLs or whatever that you got out of it.
We find that one slide funnel picture works really, really
Yeah.
well with sales
Yeah.
to help describe all the different marketing tactics that we're using and how they all fit together. And this concept of the 3 to 5% being in market at any given time, we found that really resonates well. People
Definitely.
understand it.
Yeah, I use it for kind of for board packs as well because I think it kind of,
Yes.
where you have like the different like touch points at those certain stages, definitely. So this is going to sound a little bit kind of controversial, a bit of a controversial topic then, but like how do you think then that marketing should be measured? We talked a lot about kind of campaign metrics and about I don't like calling them vanity metrics. I think that look, it makes me screw my nose up, but like it makes it sound like it's not important. It is important, but you've got all those kind of campaign and marketing metrics, and then you've got like your revenue sort of metrics. But like, how should marketing teams be compensated? Should it be kind of based on revenue targets? Should they even have commission plans like sales and be driven more towards kind of walks closing? Like, how do you feel about all of that?
So no is the answer. I don't think marketing should be compensated in the same way as sales. Um, I think it should be by objective, and that's a little different than metrics. You could have an objective that you need to meet a certain metric, but the overall objectives for marketing, like what are you trying to achieve? You're trying to land new accounts in a particular segment. You are trying to increase awareness. So, for example, I work in the compliance and third-party risk area. Everybody knows Moody's as a ratings company, but don't necessarily know Moody's as a provider of compliance and third-party risk management solutions. So one of our objectives is to create awareness amongst our ICP, our ideal customer profile, or our target segment, that we are in that space. And a lot of that, like those reach metrics will demonstrate our success in doing that. But that could be, that would be one objective, would be to increase awareness in certain segments. It could be we are trying to land new logos in this particular segment. So I think you should be measuring the success of marketing by the ability to achieve certain objectives, and the proof point of achieving that objective is not necessarily like an MQL metric. There are there are different ways of proving that marketing has made a contribution, and that shouldn't be purely on how many leads have been generated.
Yeah, definitely. I think there does need to be a bit more education and a bit of a kind of a split or a line to be drawn between kind of KPIs and then sort of objectives. Like everybody
Yeah,
has their KPIs, and sales are very KPI driven because obviously they've got the commission plans attached to that. So,
yeah.
they have to be. That's right. But I think marketing doesn't have to be totally KPI driven. I think you're right. Yeah. Okay, one last question actually for you. And it's just because you've been making me kind of wonder then about, I'm feeling kind of a lot, especially with that football kind of game analogy. I'm feeling it feels a little bit more like the kind of sales and marketing working together as a team. So I really, really like that. Like, do you, and I think it has become more difficult over the years with the buyer journey being a bit more kind of like spaghetti like, because you don't have that like clear handover, like you said about the door opening and sales, like running through or whatever. But do you think it's kind of created a lot more alignment or misalignment between sales and marketing?
It Whether it has or not, I can't comment, but I can say that the sales and marketing alignment is absolutely critical
Mm.
to success. That hasn't changed. I think that's become more and more important. But I would say it's not just sales and marketing alignment; it's customer success alignment as well. That's really important in there too.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you. So just before you go, I have a little tradition where I ask my network on LinkedIn or in the WhatsApp groups as well about if they had a marketing leader in front of them right now and there was that one burning question that they had to ask them. So this is a little bit of a surprise. Sorry to spring this on you. So they don't know who it is, who the guest is. It's just the question that's come up. So the question for you is ABM, must have or nice to have?
I would argue that there is no other marketing in B2B than ABM. So absolutely must have, but I'm not sure I would even call it ABM. It just because there is a flavour of ABM for, one to one to few, one to many. What else is left?
Yeah.
So for me, B2B marketing is ABM.
Oh, I love it, Christine. This is such a, honestly, yeah, ABM is just, to me, it's just good marketing, content marketing. It's just good marketing. All these buzzwords. But anyway, no, I love it. Thank you so much. That was perfect. Brilliant. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time. That was a really super interesting discussion. And I know I certainly have taken some things away from it. So thank you. And I hope the rest of the audience enjoyed it as well.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks. Bye bye.